So no, not done like never again trying a new tabletop role-playing game, but after trying 30 different games, mostly as one-shots, a single session of play, I am done with this quantity over quality approach. In a weird way, this 2-year journey since the D&D OGL wars, slaying and game mastering over 24 unique tabletop RPGs, it's mirrored my journey of playing and mastering Dungeons & Dragons 5e. As a beginner, I was filled with excitement, and the more I learned and experienced, the more confident I became, both in my knowledge and skill as a player and game master. But eventually, I found myself a mix of frustrated by how much there truly is to learn, and more importantly, underwhelmed by how further study was not yielding any additional fun. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's the Pareto principle, it's the fact that I have personally always had more fun just making stuff up with my friends than memorizing how this spellcasting character feature is actually really different from this other spellcasting character feature because you can combine it with this. And no, this is absolutely not a video against trying new role-playing games as one-shots. It's been super fun, and I've learned so many new ways to have fun with TTRPGs. So this video is more like my report, where I'm going to give you the single best lesson I learned from each of these 30 games, and at the end I'll tell you about the 5 new RPGs I am most looking forward to trying in 2025, but ideally not as one-shots because I've done enough of those for a year. Okay, and before number 1, as I was just moving to my next spot, I found this area where deer were probably just like chilling during the snow because there's no snow on these random patches. That's really cool. Nature. Number 1, the first TTRPG I ever played. Not really a game, it was a totally homebrewed game where my GM technically had the 5e player's handbook, but we just made everything up. Look at this spell that I had. Bear arms, 2 per day, 1d8 plus 4 plus melee plus whiz. And yeah, we used character sheets from different editions of D&D because we had no idea what we were doing, but it was amazing. And the single most important thing I learned from that game that got me hooked on tabletop RPGs was that my character could try anything. Within reason, according to the GM. To beginner me, that's what separated D&D from Elder Scrolls, and to this day, if I'm playing a TTRPG where my character cannot even try to climb a tree because I don't have the tree climb skill, then I'd rather play a video game. Game 2, D&D 3rd edition. I played this in 2016 because it happened to be the set of D&D rulebooks that my then girlfriend, now wife, Grace World Destroyer, found at a used bookstore. And that's relevant to the lesson because the 1 or 2 arguments that Grace and I have ever had were over the rules of D&D 3rd edition. Thus, I learned to never again take the detailed rules of any game so seriously that it ruins the fun. Period. And frustratingly, it was at that point that my microphone started intermittently cutting out, and I didn't realize it until after recording another like 30 or 40 minutes of footage. Yeah, I had plenty of battery. I think it was just too cold out. It's like 20-something degrees. Thankfully, it seems like no permanent damage done, but here we go. The show must go on. Number 3, D&D 5e 2014. This player's handbook is the first RPG rulebook that I ever owned, and studying it for years on end taught me many great lessons. But as we transition these lessons to including game mechanics that I love and look for in new games, it's got to be advantage and disadvantage. Roll twice and take the better or worse result is so clean that I can't believe it took D&D 40 years to figure it out, but I'm really glad they did. 4, Dungeon Crawl Classics. Abandoning the chronological order of when I tried these games, DCC is a D&D-like that strips back the detail of 5e characters and monsters and instead focuses purely on the tone and themes of pulp fantasy adventure. Like 5e, many great lessons from this game, but perhaps my favorite is to make monsters mysterious. I have a lot to say about that, so I made a whole video about it, linked below, where you can also find affiliate links to most of these RPG books if you want to check them out and support the channel. 5. X-Crawl Classics. Same core rules as DCC, basically the same core rules as D&D, but firmly planted in a post-apocalyptic future setting where dungeon crawling is a televised death sport. And that is also relevant to the lesson. XCC's grandstanding and mojo points are essentially a version of hero coins or luck tokens through which players are incentivized to try heroic or downright foolish stunts, even foregoing an attack in combat, and this drastically increases the likelihood of creating those memorable gaming moments with your friends. Okay, and I didn't plan to have any props for this, so now I'm going back and forth grabbing books, bear with me. 6. Shadow Dark. Another D&D-like that strips back the crunch, but this time focusing on speed. The main clock that keeps your Shadow Dark game flowing is the 1-hour real-time torch timer, combined with the lesson that RPGs are just more thrilling when no player characters can see in the dark. 7. Index Card RPG, one of the first D&D-like RPGs to strip back the detail of 5e, thus influencing numerous indie RPGs since. So it's kinda cheating to choose only one lesson from ICRPG, but I will go with the one that has changed my game the most and had a noticeable influence on others, like Shadow Dark. That is, simplifying movement and distance to close, near, far. Squares are cool too. These approaches are good for different styles of play, but my style works a lot better with abstract maps. Yeah, I'm really only gonna use squares again if I have to. 8 is Crown and Skull, the modern fantasy RPG that intentionally subverts the familiar core of D&D. One thing I immediately latched onto from this game is how it handles monsters. Technically still working on how to use this lesson in other games, but you just roll to see what the monsters do, saving your GM brain much space for cooler ideas and making it impossible to feel like an adversarial GM in combat. So I like that. 9, Easy D6. Way outside the mechanical core of D&D, using only 6-sided dice, my favorite part of this game is the exploding crits. Roll max damage and you roll again. And possibly again, and again. Similar to X-Crawl's grandstanding, these exploding crits create those exciting and memorable moments with your friends. Okay, and since I'm testing the mic, can you hear me when I'm all the way out at our bookshelf? Hoo-hoo, what am I gonna bring next? Number 10, Skate Wizards. Super simple D6-based gameplay with lightning-fast character creation because you're a skateboarding wizard with mostly randomized spells. And that's it. This game, along with Dungeon Crawl Classics and others, were these important steps on my path of embracing randomization, surrendering to the dice. Because when you roll a rando spell called Rad Revealing Sound Armor, and you just get to decide with the GM what that spell can do, it's rad. And now we're just on a sidebar, but Skate Wizards is the reason that I started collecting audio cassettes because it came with one. My point is, there is an unforeseen beauty of trying new RPGs. You just don't know where it'll take you. And another example of that, 11 Corny Grand, another super simple fantasy RPG. But this one is for solo play, which I had never done before outside of a little bit with Call of Cthulhu. And when I stayed up late one night, excited to complete this solo one-shot journey, I learned that I can have a lot of fun playing a fantasy TTRPG without even one other player. 12 Deathbringer Playtest, so not actually this version, but I did learn that Professor DM is a master of Scottish accents, though the real lesson was that any one-shot adventure is made 1,000 times better when you give the player characters individual secrets and goals. 13, Vagabond Playtest. I don't have a prop for this one. Another D&D-like that strips back some detail of contemporary D&D and, like Dungeon Crawl Classics, focuses on pulp fantasy. But I most enjoyed how Vagabond incorporates luck. You don't just spend it before a roll to boost the roll. You can also spend it after a roll to automatically turn a failure into a success. But then you can't crit if you spend it that way. So it's this interesting trade-off twist on a pulpy mechanic that I already like. 14, Cairn, 1E, and it was playing, not reading, but playing this super simple D20 fantasy RPG in early 2023, nearly 10 years after that first Make It Up As We Go campaign. Playing Cairn reminded me just how few rules I need to have fun playing D&D with my friends. But perhaps the best RPG rules lesson I learned from Cairn is that always having the target number, or DC, on your character sheet takes a huge burden off the game master. 15, Into the Odd. This is a groundbreaking system that inspired Cairn and what feels like countless other RPGs at this point. Even Draw Steel is taking its always hit combat mechanic from Into the Odd, and that is a fantastic lesson, but my favorite is probably what the author wrote in here when I got it signed. Stay odd. Because as someone who loves low fantasy, it is easy for me to accidentally make my fantasy world kind of mundane. But this lesson, it kind of takes the DCC lesson of mysterious monsters and lays it on everything, which is just a really important reminder for me. 16, Mouse Ritter, one of the many RPGs based on Into the Odd. You play little heroic mice in a big weird world, and this game just proved to me how simple an adventure module can be. This 2-page digest spread took me maybe 15 minutes to prep, probably less, and provided my group with a couple hours of fun. 17, Cats of Cthulhu. Mice, cats, what a segue. This super simple D6 based RPG where you play essentially mundane cats in a big weird world reinforced another lesson I learned from Cairn and Into the Odd and Mouse Ritter. That is, limiting how much gear you can carry leads to extreme creativity. Specifically, Cats of Cthulhu has the rule of one thing, where your cat character can only carry one thing that fits in its mouth. Genius. 18, Call of Cthulhu. I first played this solo back in 2019 because I love the stories of H.P. Lovecraft, and I was already looking for games kinda in contrast to 5e, where instead of playing a superhero, you play pretty much a normal person who faces incredible challenges. But Call of Cthulhu taught me that I'm kinda bad at running horror games. If it's not clear, I like to laugh, I like to goof around a little bit, and each time I ran it for myself or others, it was just too hard to not lean into the comedy that always seems to emerge at my game table. So, 19, Candela Obscura has the same vibe as Call of Cthulhu and my same issue with tone, but this game showed me that I can enjoy some eldritch horror comedy gaming with a much more simple set of rules. RPG number 20 is 10 Candles. Thankfully, Grace World Destroyer is much better than I at running horror, so she ran this one, and wow, I learned just how good my game group is at collectively building the world as we go. 10 Candles is a very unique game and experience in general, and if I'm not mistaken, it's designed exclusively for one-shots, so it is definitely something you should try out next Halloween, along with 21, Goons and Ghosts. This is my kind of horror game. Simple rules, obvious Ghostbusters tone, so it's kinda goofy, and is designed by a friend of the channel, JP Couvert, who also knows how to make extremely simple scenarios that take minutes to prep and provide hours of fun. But the main lesson for me, Goons and Ghosts inspired part of the character creation method in one of the handful of TTRPGs that I someday hope to publish. That being, game I tried number 22, my unnamed Pokemon-inspired D6-based RPG. The only other thing I'll say about it for now is the lesson that I learned by playtesting it. No matter how many times you check the math for something or how cool it seems on paper, sometimes that thing just doesn't work how you thought it would when you finally playtest it. And if you're curious to know more, my wonderful supporters on Patreon will be the first to see more about this Pokemon-inspired RPG, because I've been sitting on a draft for about a year now while working on Delve. Literally, it's just a Google Doc, but I think posting that doc for patrons will help me get back on the ball this year. Patrons also get bonus videos each month, so please consider joining through the link below. And now my camera's about to die. Already went through my first battery out in the woods super fast, I think because of cold, so probably gonna have to pick this up later. And we're back. 23 Monster of the Week. It's exactly what it sounds like using the Powered by the Apocalypse system, and it taught me that Powered by the Apocalypse is not quite as simple as everyone on the internet makes it out to be. But thankfully I had a great game master, so it was a lot of fun. 24 Thirsty Sword Lesbians. It's also exactly what it sounds like, uses the Powered by the Apocalypse system, and it taught me that when you're trying a new game system, the game master and the player's energy is way more important than the game itself. Like, it's fair to say that me and most of my group does not fall into the target demographic of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, but we all came ready to have fun. Grace ran an absolutely killer one-shot, and it was easily one of the most memorable RPG sessions I've ever played. 25 Mothership. To be reductive, it's Call of Cthulhu in space, but it gave me a game-changing lesson about RPG character skills. Even though Mothership has a lot of skills, and it's a horror game where you're supposed to hide from dangerous aliens on derelict spacecraft, there's no skill for stealth, because the designers of Mothership don't want you to just roll stealth. They want you to role play and describe how your character does the thing. And that experience confirmed for me why exploration is infamously kinda boring in D&D 5e. I made a video about that too. Check it out. 26. Earthwild Playtest, an indie RPG based on the Destiny video games. It's the first game I ever played with actual zones for combat, where the battle map is neither squares nor abstract ranges, but broken into these uneven polygons, roughly based on elevation, terrain type, and size. That was cool, but the main lesson was Earthwild's core roll. D12 dice pool, rolling high and low. You just don't want dice to come up as 5s, 6s, and 7s. You want low numbers and high numbers. And that was neat. 27, Cipher System. I played one cyberpunk-themed session in this seemingly super flexible D20 system, and similar to Earthwild, the most memorable part for me was the core roll, or maybe the psychology behind the core roll. Instead of adding bonuses to increase your result, you apply your skills and gear to decrease the target number. Also neat. 28, The One Ring. Officially licensed Lord of the Rings TTRPG, which I feel obligated to mention, has a 5e conversion by the same publisher, but this original version was built from scratch to fit the tone and themes of Middle-earth. So aside from that lesson of system kinda does matter, the real lesson that I learned was I really like how One Ring players always know the target number to roll because it's on their character sheet, and you roll high. Most other games I've played where the DCs are on the character sheet want you to roll under those numbers, but in my head, big number good. 29, The Zone. Drifting into board game sort of territory, this is a highly improvisational, weird sci-fi fantasy diceless role-playing game where you draw cards and delve into some unknowable tear in reality. The Zone, teaching me that RPGs can be fun without dice, which is really the same lesson from number 30, For the Queen. No dice, no board, just draw cards and answer questions to develop your characters and the details of their mission, escorting the queen to a neighboring monarch. Completely improvisational, but surprisingly fun. I even used this game within my DCC campaign to let my players determine some facts about the queen of my setting. And 31 and 32, because I've already played some one-shots of Daggerheart and DC-20 as playtests, but those are two of the new games I want to see more of in 2025. Some kind of mini campaign, like 3 to 5 sessions would be perfect. And the other new RPGs I want to do that with are Draw Steel and Nimble, but Those two might force me to use squares again, so we'll see. And Tales of the Valiant 5e. And D&D 2024, which both have new box set mini campaigns coming out this year. And one of my players actually wants to run a D&D 2024 homebrew campaign for their first time GM. And I definitely want to run at least a mini campaign of DCC and Shadowdark, and kind of the One Ring. But as far as one-shots go, the only new games I would currently try that way are Cosmere, at least one of the Borgs on our shelf, and I know Grace wants to try Forbidden Lands, so I don't know if I'm actually going to have time for all that, but I'll let you know in a year. Thanks again to the Pop World Builder patrons for making all of this possible, and keep building. Okay, wait, and did I mention that even my tripod bag, ripped today? Well, just as I was leaving my car out in the woods. This video might be cursed. Stay safe out there.